So I'm back working on this 1986 Honda VFR700, and an interesting thing just happened. So I left my last video and I was showing that I was blowing this ignition fuse, this 10 amp fuse, whenever I'd come here, set it to on, and as soon as I hit the starter button, it would pop. So what I'd done is I took off the starter solenoid here and I went to test it. And I'd also disassembled this whole thing and cleaned it all up, just trying to find a low-hanging fruit on what might be causing it. So then I was starting to shoot this video to show that it was still popping afterwards. And if I try this, put it to on, press the start button, I'll get nothing. All right, because the clutch needs to be engaged. But I remembered I was hitting this before without hitting the clutch. And when I hit the clutch now, I'm getting it to turn over. Now, I'm going to quick show you how I tested that starter solenoid. Still trying to troubleshoot why I'm getting an immediate fuse blown when I hit the starter switch on the bike. So I'm going to do the starter relay switch test from the manual. And basically, I've got an ohmmeter hooked up across the two big terminals. And the right terminal here is the green-red wire, which is the negative. And then when I put a positive, it'll put 12 volts across that. It should lift that and bridge these two, and I'll have resistance across them. So I should read no resistance now, because there shouldn't be any contact, and me touching this to the positive would be the same thing as me touching the starter button, and I should hear a click and then a resistance. I don't know what the resistance should be, but it floats around like that, and I don't want to keep it on too long. But I don't think this is my issue. So I think that's actually working fine. All right, so then I brought the starter solenoid. I decided to just pop it back in and wanted to test some other stuff on it. So I've got that in there. And then I went to fire it and it rolled over. Now, I know that there's a major problem still, because obviously this rat's nest is no good. And maybe I could get it to run while it's sitting. But the big issue here is this is the silicon rectifier, which I believe acts as a diode. I still can't figure out its entire purpose. This green-red is the negative for the solenoid, and the light blue-red is for the clutch switch. So I'm thinking that something was grounding itself over here, and me just messing with it a bunch actually brought it back, and I'm not shorting. This is not a good solution. I got to do something else to fix this. Now I could go through and try to replace, or not replace, but just tighten everything up. But some of this is so thin that I have to replace it. And if I look at this silicon rectifier, it looks like it has damage on it, like it's blown out, like that looks melted on there. So like even moving this around, I don't know if I'm just gonna screw it all up. Now I did do a compression test on the thing. Well, I was just jumping from here all the way to here. And I was able to find that I had 150 psi on both these two. And then the first test was 125 and 135. So I shot a shot of oil down, well, I didn't shoot them down there, I shot them down into the cylinders. And I brought them up to 140 and 150 psi. So these three are at 150 psi, this one's at 140 psi. And I'm guessing that that's going to be good enough to get there. I'm going to guess this one will actually go up once oil goes all the way around the rings completely. So I did, because I know that this wiring harness is going to have to be replaced, and I'm looking at it like, where is this piece? And I see it's kind of routed up incorrectly there. This part is actually going to be relevant to what I'm going to need to do next. So I bought another wiring harness that came off a running bike, and this is it here. And for the most part it's pretty good, and I can see two spots of damage that are going to be, you know, an issue. This here, this isn't damaged. All of those loose wires from the I think it's a diode, I'm almost positive that's what it is, but the silicon rectifier, the light blue red and the green red is all tucked into here. So all of this should work a whole lot better. The damage I'm seeing, this is a right turn signal that was clipped, and then the bigger one here, this was all into this 6-pin connector before. This red and red black have been just pulled together, so these weren't even into this connector. Now I pulled all of these out, and I think I can just get a new connector on here. I don't have any spades now, so I can put some new spades on here, put a new connector on there. The problem is that piece is just lodged and there's no way I'm going to get it out. So I started looking, and I was like, well, I have this rectifier. This is a spare rectifier. Well, this is the exact same terminal. I was also looking at the rectifier because this one doesn't fit correctly, and it has a ground on it. And I was wondering, hey, maybe that'll fit better. But all I got to do is I could actually chop some of this fender off, and this can work. Probably. That can probably work. So the unfortunate thing is I think I'm going to have to do a bunch of work pulling stuff off the old wiring harness, putting it onto this one, create one good wiring harness, and then put it onto the bike. But it's encouraging to know that it's actually working. So I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of what I've been looking at on this wiring diagram, and then I'll shut up about electrical stuff because I don't know shit about electrical. Oh, and then I was messing around a little bit, just trying to see how hard this paint was going to be to take off, and they're like, you know, they say test an inconspicuous spot first, so that's my inconspicuous spot. I think it looks kind of cool, actually. So this is the wiring diagram for this VFR700F, and I've highlighted a couple of the areas of concern on that new harness that I've got. This is the spot where I think they tied these two together, the red, black, and the red. So this wasn't even going up to here, and that goes to battery and ignition. Now, I believe this came off of a running bike, and I can't figure out how it would be a running bike without that going up here. So I was tempted to just throw it in there without going to try to replace anything, but knowing that I'll be able to do it with another one of these connectors, I can do it right. I think I'm going to do that instead. I think it's the right thing to do, and I also don't know why this bike would run with these two tied together and not actually going up to the ignition switch. Also, if anybody knows where I can buy these things, let me know. These have to be a common one because they're on so many different electrical components. I'm just not sure what to look up. This is that 10 amp fuse here that I've been blowing, and I think it has to do with these two wires here that must have been grounding out on something that they shouldn't have been. This is that silicon rectifier, and then the light green red and the green red wires from here. This is that loose mess. The fuel cut relay, I have no way to test this yet, and this is going to be coming up soon, but I know a lot of people will put a parallel, not a lot of people, but some people will put a parallel switch into this fuel cut relay. Or something else that I should do is leave something inside of the bike to be able to jump it to bypass the relay. And I also have to test the fuel pump to make sure that the pump is actually working. And I also highlighted the regulator rectifier there just because I don't know that that Hurricane one is going to work, and potentially if it doesn't, I can also put that one in. So that's where I am at with the bike. I'm encouraged by some of the things that I've been seeing. Obviously, I see a ton of just nonsense, you know, ticky-tack work that I got to do. And then also, I did just get the new stainless lines on. I know that there's still a little air pocket in there because it's still slightly spongy, but I ran out of brake fluid when I was doing it last night. So anyway, onward and upward. Bunch of weird stuff I got to do with the electrical, but I don't see any reason yet that this bike isn't going to run. So if you watch this far, thanks for watching.